He was rich, powerful, and ruthless. He believed kindness was a weakness, until life brought him to his knees. What happened next will leave you speechless. In the grand kingdom of Vithoria, King Edrin stood tall, his golden crown gleaming under the sun. Beside him was his only son, Prince Kale, a young man with a heart full of pride and an unquenchable thirst for power. King Edrin, sternly, "A king must be wise, patient, and kind to his people." Prince Auric, laughing, "Father, kindness is weakness. Power is what rules a kingdom." The king sighed. His son was talented but blind to the true meaning of leadership. He knew he had to teach him a lesson before it was too late. The next morning, the king made a shocking announcement. King Edrin, "Son, if power is all that matters, then prove it. I am sending you away with nothing but the clothes on your back. Survive on your own for 1 year and return to claim the throne." The prince laughs at first, thinking it's a joke, until the guards strip him of his crown and fine robes, leaving him in plain clothes. He is no longer a prince. As he steps outside the castle walls, he is no longer greeted with bows but with indifference. The once loyal servants turn their backs on him. Prince Arion, shocked, "Wait, I'm your prince. I command you to help me." Old merchant, "Without kindness, you are no king. Out here you are just like the rest of us." Days pass. The prince, who once had a feast prepared for him daily, now begs for food. He knocks on doors, only to have them shut in his face. His fine clothes are now tattered rags. Prince Arion, weak, voice trembling, "Please, just a little bread. I am hungry." Baker, coldly shutting the door, "Sorry, my king, power won't feed you out here." One day, after being ignored and starving for days, Arion collapses in a market. Just as he's about to give up, a poor farmer named Joran kneels beside him, Jalen, offering food. "Eat this, my friend. No one should starve." Prince Arion, weakly, "Why help me? I am nothing now." Jalen, smiling, "Because kindness is never wasted. I've been in your place too." The prince takes the bread, and for the first time in his life, he understands true kindness. One evening, a terrible storm rips through the village. Houses are crushed, crops are destroyed, people are starving and helpless. Villager, pleading, "Our children are starving. We need food, but the merchants demand double the price." Prince Arion, determined, "No more suffering. I will help you." With nothing but the skills he had learned, Arion begins helping the villagers. He teaches them farming, builds shelter, and leads them to prosperity. For the first time in his life, he finds joy in serving others. A year later, the prince returns to his father's palace, but not as the arrogant man he once was. His clothes are still simple, but his face shines with wisdom and strength. King Edrin, smiling with pride, "My son, you have changed." Prince Arion, bowing, "I finally understand, father. A true king does not command. He serves." The people, once silent, now cheer for their new king. Arion, humbled by his experience, vows to rule with justice and love. Moral of the story: true power does not come from control or wealth, but from kindness, wisdom, and the ability to serve others. Those who rule with arrogance will lose everything, but those who lead with humility will always rise again.
Once upon a time, in the grand kingdom of Valdoria, a wise and just king ruled over his people with kindness and wisdom. His name was King Varun, and he was loved by all. But despite his greatness, he had one deep concern: his only son, Prince Arion. Unlike his father, Arion was impatient, arrogant, and eager for power. He believed ruling a kingdom meant controlling people rather than serving them. But one fateful lesson would change his life forever. Inside the grand palace, King Varun sat on his throne, watching his son argue with the royal advisors. The prince dismissed their advice and claimed he could run the kingdom better than his father. "King Varun, my son, ruling is not about power. It is about wisdom and patience. A king must nurture his people as a farmer nurtures his crops. Prince Aryan. Father, why wait when we can command? If a tree doesn't bear fruit fast enough, we cut it down and plant another. The king sighed. He knew words alone wouldn't change his son's heart. One morning, King Baron took Aryan to the royal gardens. He handed him a small bag of seeds. King Baron, plant these seeds and grow your own fruit tree. Care for it as if it were your kingdom. Prince Aryan, a tree, but I am to be king, not a gardener. King Varan, patience, my son. A true leader nurtures, not commands. Unwillingly, Aryan planted the seeds, wondering how this could teach him about ruling a kingdom. Days passed, but Aryan saw no change. He grew restless. He watered the soil and checked it daily, but the seeds didn't sprout fast enough for his liking. Prince Aryan, this is pointless. I should have fruit already. He started digging up the soil, searching for signs of growth, but only disturbed the seeds further. The king watched silently, then approached his son, King Varan. You check the seeds too often. You must trust the process, my son. Prince Aryan, but how can I lead if I must always wait? King Varun, ruling a kingdom is like growing a tree. If you rush, you will destroy what you wish to create. Aryan listened, but his heart still resisted the lesson. To prove his point, the king assigned Aryan a task, to settle a dispute between two villages over water rights. Aryan, eager to assert authority, made a quick decision without hearing both sides. The villages erupted in anger. The king intervened. King Varan, wisdom comes from listening. Just as you cannot force a tree to grow, you cannot force peace without understanding. For the first time, Aryan felt doubt in his approach. Weeks passed, and Aryan noticed a tiny sprout emerging from the soil. He was amazed. Prince Aryan, it's growing, but it took so long. His father smiled. Good things take time. Do you see the value of patience now? Aryan started to care for the plant properly, resisting the urge to rush the process. One day, a strong storm hit the kingdom. Crops were destroyed, and people suffered. Aryan wanted to act immediately and redistribute all the kingdom's food supplies at once. King Varan, if we give everything now, what will we do in the coming months? Prince Aryan, but people are starving. King Varan, we must ration and plan. Like a tree survives storms by being strong yet flexible, a king must make wise decisions. This time, Aryan listened. The kingdom survived the crisis due to his father's careful planning. Years later, Aryan's tree had grown tall, bearing sweet fruits. He finally understood what his father had been teaching him all along. Prince Aryan, a kingdom like this tree must be nurtured with patience and care. His father beamed with pride. You are ready, my son. On his coronation day, King Varan handed Aryan a golden staff, carved from the wood of a great tree. King Varan, this staff represents wisdom and patience. Lead with these, and you will be a great king. Aryan bowed, no longer the impatient boy, but a wise leader ready to serve his people. As King Aryan ruled, he often visited his tree, remembering the lessons it had taught him. Moral: true leadership is not about commanding, but nurturing. Patience and wisdom build a lasting legacy, just like a tree that provides shade and fruit for generations.
A blind beggar sat at the city gates, ignored by most, pitied by few. His frail hands reached out for alms, his voice cracked with hunger. But what no one knew was that this beggar was no ordinary man. He was once a mighty king, betrayed, dethroned, and cast into darkness. Yet fate had one final twist for him, a chance to reclaim his throne. But would he take it? Or had he learned a deeper truth about power and humanity? The scorching sun beat down on the crowded marketplace. Among the merchants and travelers, a blind beggar sat by the city gates, his tattered robes covered in dust. "Spare some coins, kind sir," he whispered. But most people walked past him, uninterested in the fate of a broken man. Only a young boy, Rami, would occasionally bring him scraps of food. "Here, old man, eat this," he said, placing a piece of bread in the beggar's trembling hands. The beggar smiled. "Thank you, child. You remind me of someone from long ago." His fingers traced the shape of the bread as if remembering a forgotten luxury. But what no one knew, what no one even suspected, was that this blind beggar was once King Aldrich, ruler of this very kingdom. Years ago, Aldrich was a wise and just ruler, beloved by his people. But his own brother, Prince Edric, envied his throne. One fateful night, betrayal struck. Aldrich's most trusted advisor poisoned his wine, and when he awoke, he was blind. "Your reign ends today," Edric had whispered in his ear. "A blind king is no king at all." By dawn, Aldrich was dragged from his palace and left in the wilderness to die. But fate had other plans. Lost, broken, and alone, Aldrich stumbled through forests and villages, learning how cruel the world could be. The once mighty king had to beg for food, face humiliation, and understand the pain of the common people. He learned that not all rulers are loved, and that suffering was everywhere, beyond the walls of his golden palace. It was only then that he realized. He had ruled his kingdom, but he had never truly known it. One evening, as Aldrich sat shivering in the cold, Rami approached him again. "You shouldn't be out here," the boy said, wrapping a thin cloak around the beggar's shoulders. Aldrich's fingers traced the fabric. It felt familiar. "Where did you get this?" he asked. "My mother works in the palace," Rami answered. "The new king, King Edric, gave away many of the old king's things. He says he saved us from a fool." Aldrich's heart ached. His own belongings now given away like scraps. His brother's lies had poisoned not only his rule, but the hearts of the people. But this was his chance. That night, Aldrich whispered to Rami, "Take me to the palace." The boy hesitated. "But the king doesn't allow beggars inside." Aldrich smiled. "Then let's not go as beggars." Together, they devised a plan. Disguised under a hooded cloak, Aldrich followed Rami into the palace, his heart pounding with every step. The walls whispered with memories of his past life, the throne that was once his, now occupied by a traitor. In the grand hall, Edric feasted among his nobles, his laughter echoing through the chamber. Aldrich, still hidden, spoke in a low voice. "A wise king once ruled this land. Do you know his fate?" The room fell silent. Edric's face darkened. "That fool is long dead." Aldrich stepped forward, throwing off his hood. "Are you sure?" Gasps filled the hall. The blind beggar stood before them, his voice unmistakable. Guards rushed to seize him, but Aldrich raised a hand. "I am not here to fight, but if you claim my rule was unworthy, let the people decide." The nobles murmured among themselves. The truth had to be faced. Edric, cornered, agreed to a trial. The next day, the people of the city gathered. Aldrich, standing before them, asked, "Who among you has suffered under Edric's rule?" One by one, voices rose, merchants overtaxed, farmers beaten, soldiers punished for questioning orders. The truth shattered Edric's illusion. As the chants grew louder, Edric fled the palace, his own fear consuming him. Aldrich stood before his reclaimed throne. The palace echoed with silence. "Take your rightful place, my king," an advisor said. But Aldrich hesitated. He had spent years among the people, suffering like them. Would he return to his throne, or was his destiny elsewhere? At last, he turned to Rami. "A true king serves his people, and sometimes that means walking among them, not ruling from above." Aldrich walked away from the throne. His kingdom did not need a ruler, it needed a guide. Aldrich chose to live not as a king, but as a servant of his people. He traveled across the kingdom, healing the broken, guiding the lost, and teaching wisdom to those who would listen. And so, the blind beggar who was once a king became greater than any ruler before him. The moral of the story: true power is not in ruling over people, but in understanding them. A king is only as great as the love of his people. What would you choose? Power or purpose? Let us know in the comments. Imagine discovering a ring that could grant you any wish: wealth, power, eternal youth. But what if every wish came with a terrible price? one you wouldn't realize until it was too late. This is the chilling tale of a man who let greed blind him, only to realize that some gifts are nothing more than a beautiful curse. A poor merchant named Darius stumbles upon an ancient-looking ring in the ruins of an abandoned temple. The ring glows with an eerie blue light. As he picks it up, a voice whispers in his mind, "3 wishes I shall grant, but beware, every gift demands a price." Darius, desperate to escape his life of poverty, laughs off the warning and puts the ring on. Back home, Darius tests the ring, whispering, "I wish for endless gold and riches." The ground trembles as his hut transforms into a grand palace, overflowing with gold, jewels, and silks. But outside in the city, disaster strikes. A great famine sweeps the land, leaving thousands starving. Darius is too blinded by his fortune to realize. His wish drained wealth from others. Growing greedy, Darius wishes to become king, commanding armies and ruling with absolute power. At once, the current king falls dead, and Darius finds himself in the royal palace, crowned before a stunned court. But his rule is not welcomed. The people fear and despise him. Rebellion brews. Why does everything I gain bring more trouble? He wonders. But still, he refuses to let go of the ring. One night, a hooded figure visits Darius in the palace, revealing the truth about the ring. The ring was forged in darkness. Every wish you make takes life from another. Darius laughs off the warning, believing he can outsmart fate. But the ring tightens on his finger, refusing to be removed. Fearing death from rebellion, Darius makes his final wish. "I wish to never die." The ring glows violently, and Darius feels immense power surge through him. His enemies stab him in the throne room. Yet, he does not bleed. He does not die. But he feels every wound, every pain, forever. Darius, now immortal but unable to heal, is dragged through the streets as the people rejoice in their king's defeat. But no matter what they do, he does not die. The ring had granted his wish in the worst way possible. He would suffer for eternity, unable to escape his pain. Decades pass. The world moves on. Darius is forgotten, wandering the land in eternal agony. His body is broken, his soul trapped in an endless nightmare. He whispers regretfully, "I should have listened. Some gifts are not worth receiving." Centuries later, a young traveler finds the cursed ring, half buried in the sand. As he picks it up, he hears a whisper, "3 wishes I shall grant, but beware, every gift demands a price." The boy's eyes widen with excitement. Darius, watching from the shadows, screams, "No! Don't put it on!" But the boy slips it onto his finger. The cycle begins again. Greed blinds us to the hidden costs of our desires. Be careful what you wish for. Some gifts come with terrible consequences. True happiness doesn't come from power or wealth, but from wisdom and humility.